I discovered the mosque when I was in London once, and it may seem funny that I was in London and discovered a mosque in Germany, but I was in this bookstore that sold radical Islamist literature, and there was a map on the wall of the world, and surrounding the map were all the famous mosques of the world. And there was mosques in Saudi Arabia and in Turkey and so on, and there was the Islamic center of Munich among these mosques. And I thought, that's really strange. Why would the Islamic center of Munich, which is certainly not the biggest mosque in Germany, it's not the oldest mosque in Germany, I'd heard of it, but it was not really a major mosque. Why would that mosque be among this pantheon of the world's most famous mosques? So I began to ask around, and I found out that the Islamic center of Munich was the first overseas mosque of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it has a whole cast of characters that, to me, exemplify how Western society has tried to make use of Islam. And I say make use of Islam in a bad way, instrumentalize Islam for its own short-term political purposes. The mosque's history goes back actually to World War II, when the Nazis had a plan to use Muslims to counter the Soviet Union. They were using Muslims for anti-Soviet propaganda. Some of these people ended up in Munich after the war. And then the second phase started when Western intelligence began to say, hey, we can also use these people to bash the Soviet Union. So they essentially hired them as covert propaganda experts. You have to remember, at this time, the United States was involved in what it saw as a life and death struggle against communism. The Third World was just coming into existence. Countries that once had been colonies of Britain and France and other countries were becoming independent. And nobody knew where these countries were going to go. If they all went into the communist camp, the US would have been pretty isolated around the world, and especially in strategically important areas of the Middle East. If this sounds sort of familiar to today's politics, it's not a coincidence, because in essence, this story is a precursor to a lot of what has gone on. It's a microcosm to how we've tried to use Islam for, I think, short-term political purposes. The best way to deal with religions are as civil society organizations that we should respect, we should talk to, but we shouldn't try to use as some kind of a tool for foreign policy purposes. This is something we're still doing today. In the Bush administration we did it, and in the Obama administration there are also similar efforts underway. So I think this is a lesson that we really need to take to heart, and I think this book can help cast some light on this issue.